Good Yontif. I cannot see you, but it gives me comfort to know that there is a community out there that is celebrating this sacred day with their family and their friends. I probably am in our backyard right now celebrating this service with my family. This morning I want to talk about the increasing rise of antisemitism worldwide in the United States. This antisemitism ranges from chants of the Jews will not replace us to challenges of the state of Israel's right to exist. But I'd like to say something different about antisemitism. My supposition this morning, and I suggest with humility and with the expectation that many of you may not agree with me, but I ask that you listen with an open heart, because I believe that the role of a rabbi is to challenge the status quo and to make us think. My rabbis as a young boy and in rabbinical school challenged me, and I hope to do the same with you this morning. So here's my supposition. Deep down inside, many of those who hate us do so because they begrudgingly respect us, even if they are not consciously aware of it. Some anti-Semites believe that they are the true Israel and that we are mere imposters. When I told my daughter Rika the name and the title of this sermon, she said, "Oh, so basically they hate us because they ain't us." In essence, yes. It doesn't make anti-Semitism easier to accept, but it explains some of the strangeness of the words coming from Eagles wide receiver Deshaun Jackson or Nation of Islam minister Louis Farrakhan and others. I'll speak about them shortly. Now, respect for us does not always lead to anti-Semitism. In fact, the founders of America had a positive respect for us, and there was little contempt for the Jewish community in colonial America. A wonderful book by Yale professor Philip Goski writes, and I quote, "American founders saw their own state as a mirror of the Exodus. They were self-conscious about establishing covenants in biblical terms. They'd open a church. It had a covenant. They founded a town. It was a covenant. Amos, Isaiah, Jeremiah's call for justice and liberty was translated into the Puritan call for reform that later became the cry for revolution. On July 4th, 1776, the U.S. declared its independence, and the Continental Congress named Franklin and future presidents John Adams and Thomas Jefferson to form a committee to design the Great Seal of America. If Ben Franklin had had his way, the United States Great Seal would have featured Moses leading the children of Israel through the Red Sea instead of a bald eagle. Franklin's design, with his own handwritten notes in the margin, alluded to Moses standing on the shore, extending his hands over the sea, thereby causing the same to overwhelm Pharaoh, who was sitting on an open chariot, crown on his head, sword in his hand. You see, for Franklin, Pharaoh was King George, the Red Sea was the Atlantic Ocean, and the revolutionaries, they were the new Israel. The Liberty Bell, which sits outside Independence Hall, is so called because it is inscribed with the line from the book of Leviticus, "Proclaim liberty throughout the land to all the inhabitants thereof." So why did that line from Leviticus make it on that famous bell? It was because the Jubilee year, which is referenced in Leviticus, was about giving freedom to the enslaved, releasing the poor from the shackles of impoverishment. Leviticus teaches us today that everyone was entitled to land, life, and liberty. So the Jubilee was instituted in the biblical times, giving freedom to the poor from their debts and the return of lost property every 50 years or Jubilee year. The founders of America were enthralled by that idea. So how many of you knew of that great respect from our founders for us as Jews? Even as I think about it, I well up with pride. One more example. Yale's coat of arms, or as my great-grandfather might have called it, Yale, has on its words Urim and Tumim. These Hebrew words mean light and purity. It is in reference to the high priests of the biblical period's breastplate, which had Urim and Turim written on it, and it was used in order so that they could make judgments based upon the principles of light and purity. If we look a little earlier in history, we will learn that others had a more complicated relationship with us. The relationship today between the Jewish people and the Catholic Church is strong. One of the most important roles that I fulfill as a synagogue rabbi is to develop relationships with other faiths, including the Catholic community. I think of Monsignor McHenry and feel blessed to call him a friend and an ally. Recently, Pope Francis said, and I quote, "The habit of persecuting Jews is beginning to be reborn. Brothers and sisters, this is neither humane nor Christian. The Jews are our brothers and sisters and must not be persecuted. Understood?" End quote. Every year we invite Catholic educators to Beth in conjunction with the ADL, where together we learn about Jewish practices and history. I am always amazed by their respect and their desire sincerely to build bridges between our faiths. But the history between the Catholic Church and the Jewish people was not years ago as strong as it is today. You see, the Catholic Church respected our covenant with God, yet condemned us for not affirming their new faith. They reviled us, but needed us for theological reasons. As early as the 4th century, the Catholic Church confirmed what we had stated for years, namely that God chose the Jewish people to uphold a covenant established by God through Moses. But the church then went on to deny our place in the religious world, arguing that because we had rejected their new religious tenets, went on the off-road of history, and that they, the Catholic Apostolic Church, subsequently became the new Israel. Seeing themselves as the newly elect, they designed the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican to mirror the exact proportions of the temple in Jerusalem. Rome became the New Jerusalem. And of course, the New Testament, a reference to the Gospels and the Epistles, was meant to replace the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament. The early papal leaders understood that in order for the New Testament to be true, that they had to affirm the truth of the Old Testament while moving beyond it. Later, according to the Catechism of the Catholic Church in 877, it read that the Church itself must see itself as the new Israel. This idea, as I said before, happily repudiated by the Church today, is called supersessionism. But the fact remains that for years, the Church believed that the Jews were once covenanted with God, but now spurned, and that a new covenant or testament was given, making the Church and the Christians the new Israel. Islam also believes that their early founders had Jewish authority. The Islamic holiday Qurbani Eid, or Eid al-Adha, known as the Sacrifice Festival, celebrates a great feast of sacrifice on the 10th day of the last month of the Muslim year. This celebrates the willingness of Abraham to sacrifice his son Ishmael on Mount Moriah. They tell this story based on the parashah that we read on Rosh Hashanah about the sacrifice of Isaac, not Ishmael. And although the Quran does not name the child who Abraham was to sacrifice, Muslims believe it was Ishmael, as taught by the Quran. One Muslim scholar, after citing numerous texts, conclude, and I quote, "It is quite clear that Ishmael was the son to be sacrificed, not Isaac." In other words, the scholars and others have argued that the Bible, though much older than the Quran, had corrupted the story, erasing the real hero, Ishmael. From this perspective, the Jews have usurped Islamic power by saying that we are the descendants of Abraham, when in fact, according to the Quran, it is the Islamic community who are the true elect. Tremendous conflict resulted from this divergence of opinion because Ishmael became the father of Islam and Isaac became the Jewish patriarch. So who was God's beloved son brought up to the top of that mountaintop to be sacrificed? It's as if both communities fought for recognition to be the descendants of the true beloved son of Abraham. Just as an aside, even the Christians weigh in on this debate, stating that the only begotten beloved son to be sacrificed was neither Isaac nor Ishmael, but Jesus. Much of the conflict that Israel has with her Arab neighbors has less to do with land and more to do with faith and the question of who is God's beloved. That's what makes the conflict so difficult. Fast forwarding now, I'd like to speak about Louis Farrakhan, the minister of the Nation of Islam, who says that blacks are the true Hebrews and that we are merely imposters. This message was similar to that of the church's belief of supersessionism. Deshaun Jackson, Nick Cannon echoed Farrakhan's belief. In a quote Jackson wrongly associated with Hitler, he said, and I quote, "The white Jews know that the blacks are the real children of Israel, and to keep America secret, the Jews will blackmail America. They will extort America. Their plan for world domination won't work if the blacks know who they are. The white Christians of America will be terrified to know that all this time they have been mistreating and discriminating and lynching the children of Israel." And then it got uglier. The NAACP Philadelphia director Rodney Muhammad posted on Twitter a character of a Jewish man wearing a yarmulke and pressing a large bejeweled hand down on a faceless mass of people. Similar caricatures trace themselves back to just before the Holocaust and often were used to depict Jews as a force of greed and oppression. Next to that image was a quote falsely attributed to French philosopher Voltaire: "To learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize." It is a horrible lie and, quite frankly, terrifying, because it is gaining traction in too many communities. In Farrakhan and Jackson and Cannon's thinking, they are the new chosen people in the new world, and they replace us, the chosen people, from the old world. Farrakhan and others believe that as the Jews were chosen for suffering and exile years ago, so the black community today is the new chosen people, singled out more than the Jews for suffering, exile, and enslavement. In early days, musical spirituals drew parallels between Jews and blacks as they fought against slavery. Now, some, clearly not all, have gone one step further, saying that they are not like the Jews, but that they are the Jews. Before I continue, it is important to say that while hatred from Farrakhan and his followers is nothing less than deplorable, let us not forget how many African American leaders, especially Pastor Kwan, have condemned his hatred. In the toxicity of social media, we are more likely to see the hatred than the condemnation of it. But the fact remains, our friends at Bethlehem Baptist Church have said publicly that they stand with us against antisemitism. And happily, the national NAACP took action to remove their regional director. So why do so many people hate us? And in the same time, perversely, want to be us? Why do so many faiths and people see their story as a retelling of our story? I humbly believe it is because they see us as a unique people, with it a story of courage, faith, and defiance against oppression. They see us as chosen to bear witness to God in the face of doubt, goodness in the face of evil, struggle in the face of weakness, and hope in the midst of despair. We overcame forces of evil, beginning with Pharaoh, and became a model of courage to overthrow tyranny. As we fight antisemitism, let us understand what it truly is. Some will tell you that its roots lie in our success. It can't be. Other religious communities are far more successful than we are and are not hated like we are. Others see it in the fact that we are accused of deicide, also not true. Much of this hatred has nothing to do with faith. Others say we are hated because we refuse to assimilate, to accept the norms of society. I don't accept that either. The Amish are far more separatist than we are, and they're not hated to the degree that we are. Others take a more Freudian perspective. In the eyes of the anti-Semite, Barry Weiss writes, formerly of the New York Times, "The Jew is everything. It is not the actual Jew that most anti-Semites hate. Most have never met one. But what the haters project onto the Jew. The Jew is whatever the anti-Semite needs him to be. What we find reprehensible in ourselves and cannot confront in ourselves, we project onto the Jew." Weiss notes, antisemitism turns the Jew into the symbol of whatever a given civilization defines as the most sinister and the threatening of qualities. For some, it might be atheism, fundamentalism, cosmopolitanism, tribalism, or all of them at the same time. I find that to be, quite frankly, a compelling argument. But maybe, just maybe, some hate us because they see something compelling and faithful in us. They see in us a faith that has stood the test of time and that is affirmed by every faith in the West. You see, Christians may disagree with Muslims on their faith. Muslims may disagree with Christians as to the divinity of their Savior. But if both faiths are to survive, each must agree that there is something unique about the Jewish people because we were covenanted, chosen by God. If we are not, and they came from us, then their faith is hollow. So even as some hate us, they without awareness begrudgingly respect us. Even as they seek to undermine us, they see something in us undying. So let us not cower, let us not waver, let us not falter. May we see in this idea some form of flattery. I want to share with you, going back to Barry Weiss one more time, a quote from her. She stood up in New York City and said these words, and I know she is a controversial figure. You ask 3 Jews about her and you will get 4 opinions. But I appreciate her courage and her inspirational words. She said, and I share them with you, I am a proud American. I am a proud New Yorker. I am a proud Jew. I am not a Jew because people hate my religion, my people, and my civilization. Not for a single moment does Jew hatred, like the kind we are seeing in this city, make me a Jew. I am a Jew because of the audacity and iconoclasm of Abraham, the first Jew of all. The whole world was awash in idols, and he stood alone to proclaim the truth. There is one God. I am a Jew because my ancestors were slaves. I am a Jew because the story of Exodus from Egypt and their liberation from slavery is a story that changes human consciousness forever. I am a Jew because our God commands us never to oppress the stranger. I am a Jew because Ruth, the first convert to Judaism, told her mother-in-law Naomi, "Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God," reminding us of the centrality of the Jewish people to Judaism. I am a Jew because of Queen Esther, who understood that she had attained her royal position just in order to save her people from destruction. I am a Jew because the Maccabees were the original resistance, because they modeled for us and for all people how to resist the temptation of self-erasure. I am a Jew even after the heart of Judaism and Jewish sovereignty was destroyed. My people refused to accept the logic of history and disappear. I am a Jew because some of our greatest renewals took place in exile. I am a Jew because my people have been targeted and despised and murdered by Nazis and Soviets. I am a Jew because evil hates my people. I am a Jew because my people managed to turn destruction into redemption by returning to their land after 2,000 years. I am a Jew because of students across this country who refuse to be smeared and denigrated because of who they are, who are standing up against humiliation, pressure, and abuse just to affirm their support of Zionism. I am a Jew because my brothers and sisters in England and France are battling antisemitism of populist thugs and the antisemitism of politicians in Parliament. I am a Jew because Jews of every color and class and political language. I am a Jew because hatred of us has no color or class or politics or language. I am a Jew because Jews do not cause Jew hatred ever. Today, as in so many times in history, there are many forces in the world insisting that the Jews must disappear. Some say it bluntly, some cloak it in the language of progress. But I am a Jew because I know that there is a force greater than that, and that is the force of who we are and the force of our world-changing ideas. The Jewish people were not put on earth to be anti-Semites. We were put on earth to be Jews. We are the people whose God never slumbers or sleeps, and so neither should we. We are the lamplighters. We are the ever-dying people who refuse to die. The people of Israel lives now and forever. And she concluded her words with, Am Yisrael Chai. How right she is. Israel lives and must live. But I believe that Am Yisrael Chai means more than that. It means being proud of who we are and recognizing that we have something precious to share in this world, and that even those who despise us somehow unconsciously recognize us. Let us be proud of who we are. Let us proudly stand up and celebrate our faith. And let us see in other people's contempt for us a dream of reformulating our ancient story. Let us stand up and celebrate who we are by supporting our synagogues, Jewish charities, and the State of Israel. As we see COVID challenging our inability to congregate together, so let us celebrate who we are on our own. Let us light Shabbat candles and make Kiddush at home. Let us wave the lulav and the etrog on Sukkot, eat matzah, not bread, on Passover, read Torah on Shabbat. Let us go to israelbonds.com and buy a bond and stand with the State of Israel. Let us be proud, defiant, resolute, and faithful. Let us stand up for social justice. Let us never shirk our responsibilities. For our task is to be the lamplighter, to hold up the torch, to say now and forever, Am Yisrael Chai. The people of Israel live. Good Yontif.